All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending tonight's Planning Commission meeting. We'll go ahead and get started. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Roll call, please.
Collins.
Here.
Evans. Here. Rudder.
Here.
Scrapel.
Here.
Colbert.
Here.
Kabiri.
Here.
Danganello.
Here.
Here.
And quorum.
Thank you. Next item, approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next item is approval of the minutes from February 2nd, 2022. We've got them right here in front of us. Any changes?
Those are edited minutes.
Those are edited minutes? Sorry.
So, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, we created a new version of the minutes. After speaking with the city attorney, we knew that there were some thoughts out there about maybe changing the format a little bit, and in recognition of the fact that we have video recording of our meetings, we can make these minutes just action items rather than play-by-play, which we've been moving away from for many years. So this is the next iteration of that. We can either have you review that and approve them tonight, or we can go with the old version of the minutes. But we thought we would give you the choice to take a look at those.
How long do we keep the video recording? How long is that made available?
Well, a few years at least. I don't know if they're archived after that and kept. We'd have to look into that.
I understand that it's staff's preference to move towards this, but I really much prefer the more detailed minutes because that is the only written record of the meeting, and that's the only thing that is kept for a long period of time. And it also becomes part of the council record, whereas they're not required to watch the video. They're allowed to watch the video, but not required to. So I would prefer going back to a much more detailed minutes, and because there's a lot of context and a lot of information in the meeting that is part of the record that doesn't appear in permanence anywhere if the video goes away.
Okay, we could have this discussion in a study session environment so we have a chance to provide that input. We just thought we would share that with you tonight if that was the direction you wanted to go. But perhaps for this evening, we should just look at these minutes that went in your packet, and if there are any minutes to move forward.
The meetings that were in the packet or the meetings as they're rewritten? I'm sorry.
No, the meeting minutes that were sent to you in the supplemental packet. Not the new ones that were shown to you as an alternative tonight.
Are we discussing the minutes?
No, it's the motion. Or is there a motion to approve the minutes? Is on the table.
There is a motion to approve.
No,
it.
there's
I'm
not.
asking
We're
you.
asking.
Well, I'll so move because I want to discuss.
Okay. You want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion, yes.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Wait. I would still like to discuss the minutes before we vote
Okay.
on them.
Yeah.
And I think I just said a lot of what I said. There's nothing in here that I find incorrect. I just think that they're lacking given the entire context of the meeting, given how much information there was in the meeting. There's a lot of questions that commission asked, but no answers to any of that. So I think they're incomplete.
A question for staff. Given the case last time there was a lot of information, a lot of back and forth. How does it normally handled? I mean, are we able to transcribe, record everything, every comment? I mean, how does it normally work? Because that was a lot.
It was a lot, and so we have been relying on the video record, frankly, when we have these kinds of hearings, and that is the actual meeting. So to me, that is the best record there is. If there's a version of the written meeting minutes that we need to go to, we can discuss. It takes a lot of staff time to put those meetings together and have a 3 or 4 hour meeting, and so we want to be conscious of that as well and develop a policy that's workable. But I think most municipalities have moved away from detailed minutes because there's video, and we can, as I mentioned, we can check and see how long that video is kept, and if we need to change that policy to keep it longer or make it available longer, we can look into that as well. But It's kind of a trade-off on limited staff time as well. That's one of the considerations.
Yeah.
But we can have a more robust conversation about that in a study session if you like.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I mean, it seems in today's time, we should be able to upload videos to the cloud forever, right? So,
Yeah, and my comment, I'm actually the one that called Lori to discuss this, so this is how what precipitated it. And in reading this, there's a lot of snippets, as I call them. You know, Evan's question, Tiberi felt. I don't know how anybody knows how I felt, but Rudder mentioned, Fanginello mentioned. And there's just a lot of snippets, and it's either you put the whole transcript from the entire meeting in here. It just doesn't make sense to just put a bunch of random sentences in there about who said what, and there's no, a lot of it is so what? I mean, somebody said something, but there's no follow-up to it. So the one incorrect statement I felt was in here was it says, Tiberi felt that the conclusion of a PUD may not be appropriate, and I didn't feel that, nor did I actually say that. So, you know, if you could strike that, I said something different, which doesn't matter, but, so, what I do think is lacking from the minutes is when people ask questions and, you know, of staff. Not only should there be resolutions when we resolve and vote, but I think that when we ask something and follow-up is due, specifically that should be in the minutes. But we can talk about that, as Rick mentioned, I think maybe in a study session and not now. Sorry.
So, Commissioner Tiberi, for now, are you just requesting that we strike that sentence from the?
Yeah, Rick, if we could do that, I think that would be a good idea, and I do think we need to probably come up with a format that everybody's happy with, because, I mean, I read this and I was like, I don't know what to make of it, you know, so.
The answers to these questions are important and important to be recorded.
Yes, yeah, if there's a specific question, but if the fact that I mentioned something, it doesn't make it, you know, I could pull something out here, for example.
yeah. No, I think the point's made. I mean, I think it would be really difficult to have everything written. You know, take it, like, as the staff said, that take too much of their time, or maybe, but I think video seems reasonable, and we just got to figure out a way to, you know, keep it indefinitely. So,
Well, I also think that for cases that is a recommendation to council, we should have a different standard of minutes.
Yeah.
I think for a site plan where it's a final decision, video might be appropriate, but when council looks at our minutes to look at how the meeting went, we need to have more detail than what's in here.
yeah, again, I think it would be really hard to do written, but we can explore it in a study session.
I do kind of agree with Commissioner Evans in that searchable documentation is advantageous when you're going back to find things.
Yeah.
So minutes being a little bit more detailed and thorough, that's a searchable document, where video is not easily searched.
Yeah. Again, study session, sounds like
Yep,
the best
absolutely.
avenue. And staff can come with us prepared with what other municipalities are doing in cases like this. So are we just approving the minutes as amended?
Correct, I think
Okay.
if that has been moved.
And-
Yeah, I'll modify my motion to
Okay.
approve them as amended.
Okay. And who had the second already?
It was me.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No.
No, okay. So we're going to move on to public comment that is not related to tonight's case about CoorsTek. So if anyone has any public comment, again, not related to tonight's case, you can come up and state your name and your case. Not seeing anyone come up, I'll go ahead and close general public comment, and we'll move on to tonight's scheduled case.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. As Commission is aware, there has been a request by the applicant for CoorsTek to continue the meeting to April 6th. And the applicant is here to formally make that request. A letter has been provided to you as well. But the applicant will be prepared to come to the podium and state the reasons for the request, and we can talk any details you would like between now and that time.
Okay. Okay, at this time, we'll invite the applicant up to. Again, if you could just state your name and your.
Good evening, commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
It's on the board.
I'm Dan Cohen, and I represent CoorsTek and lead the redevelopment project that we're discussing on behalf of CoorsTek and the Coors family. And as you've already seen in the letter submitted by Michael Coors, CEO of CoorsTek, we're requesting a continuance of the hearing until April 6th. Happy to talk a little bit, very briefly, why. As you heard from me previously, very briefly, we're anxious to answer your questions, and we're anxious to share with you information and with the public information to help clarify or at least explain some pretty complicated stuff in many instances. And I'll say we're disappointed, but this is our request. So, we wanted to do that, but we also heard from a number of members of the community in writing that was expressed and submitted to the city and then shared with us a desire for more time, for understanding the issues, for more community engagement, and we want to honor that request. We want to make sure people feel that they do thoroughly understand these issues. Again, it's a big project, it's complicated, and we know some of these issues are things that people have no previous experience with or context for. Not everybody's a planner or in real estate, and so we want to make sure we honor that desire for more information and honor the desire for more robust engagement. We've been working on this, including interacting with city staff and interacting with members of the community for over a year. So we've always felt community engagement, community input's important. We've done our best to hear and learn from the community and incorporate that feedback into what we've submitted as part of our application. But it's pretty clear that a number of people and organizations in the community feel that more time and more engagement's warranted, and we appreciate your consideration for a continuance. My apologies to anybody who is disappointed that we're not presenting this evening, or they're not getting a chance to express their questions or concerns in this forum this evening, and my apologies to you all. I'm sure you still have more comments and questions that may be directed at us, so sorry that we're asking you to wait a little bit longer, but we hope this more time and additional engagement will be useful for the community, and then when people come and speak or listen at the subsequent future hearing, that they'll feel that they've been heard and that they've had their questions answered. Also, just appreciate staff willingness to help lead that effort. People have expressed us thanks for reaching out and doing community engagement, but we understand you're the applicant and it's not the same. So we think collaborating with city staff and having them organize the meetings and what that we participate in is a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments for the applicant? Commissioner Ritter.
Well, I don't know if it's the right time. I just wanted to make a disclosure. I was contacted by a resident in the past 3 weeks about this case, and I just wanted to put that on the record. I made it very clear to the resident that that we were not to speak about this case, and I asked them to submit comments to planning staff. So just wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you.
That's great. And Commissioner, is it Rutter?
Rutter.
Do you remember the name of the individual? Or was it a contact via email or?
I suspect it's the same person that contacted me, Francesca Owens.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay, so that's great. I appreciate you. Was there any email correspondence or?
Yes, I followed up with an email.
Great.
I wanted to provide her some information on who her city councilors were. So unrelated to the case, I was able to provide that information.
Great. Why don't you, at your convenience, why don't you pass that along to the clerk, just so that we we have that, but you did absolutely the right thing, right? It's just to make sure that individual understands that they can submit comments in writing or can attend the public hearing, which I guess, based on the formal request tonight, is I think we're targeting the April 6th deadline. So appreciate you making that disclosure. And I'm sorry, I should have probably just quickly introduced myself, because you guys are probably wondering, who's this guy sitting over
Yeah,
there?
right.
So my name's Marcus McCaskin. I'm with the law firm of Mishaw, Cox and McCaskin. I'm here because Lori Strand, who you're familiar with, is up in the mountains with her family, and given the snow conditions, thought it best not to make the trip down here, and that's why I'm kind of here tonight filling in for Lori. So just real quickly, I want to introduce myself to the commission.
Commissioner Trey, were you done?
No, I was contacted by the same person, and essentially the same result. She called me twice, and suggested that she submit public comment, which I believe she did. We've seen that. So, and I do want to say I don't think she was inappropriate. She was definitely a little bit persistent, but polite when I told her I didn't talk, and so I think she's submitted that, and I documented it in an email to Lori.
That's great. So I appreciate you raising this, because you know what? I mean, with a project like this, where it's an infill project, an important project for the community, it's you know, you're going to have folks that probably do reach out to you, and the action that you took is absolutely appropriate, right? Encourage that individual to attend the public hearing. But if you are contacted and there's an email that gets forwarded, then forward it along, and just disclose those contacts. And you guys know this. You're in the middle of a quasi-judicial proceeding, right? So if there's going to be additional meetings that are scheduled for public engagement, I would advise you to not attend those meetings, right, or not watch the videos, because quite frankly, part of the process that the applicant will be going through in having these these additional meetings is they may very well change or modify the application in some way, and it's that modified application that will ultimately be back in front of you. So it's important to, since it is quasi-judicial and you're sitting with your judge hat on in this role, it's important for you to not attend those public meetings that are being held outside of the public hearing that will ultimately be held here. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I don't know if you have a question, if you're just asking.
Comment regarding the continuance, go ahead.
No.
Commissioner Collins.
Regarding the continuance, I'd like to applaud CoorsTek and Mr. Cohen in suggesting this, in that I personally believe that community input on a project is prominent and has as big of a impact to the community, the magnitude of the project, et cetera. The more community input that you guys take into the process of designing and planning the project, the better in my world. So I'd like to applaud the continuance and say, yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Mr. Chair, I've got a process question. The applicant has spoken. Do we open for public comment and then have deliberations on the continuance, or what does the process look like tonight?
I'll look to
Well,
staff.
I mean, the request for a continuance is really procedural. I don't see any benefit to taking public comment. I mean, the public comment portion of the hearing will definitely be held, right? I think that's important for all of the commissioners and those members of the public that may be in the audience tonight or tuning in tonight. The fact that there's going to be held, there will be a couple of opportunities for them to attend public engagement meetings does not change the fact that ultimately this will be coming back before the Planning Commission for a public hearing, at which point they're invited to attend that public hearing and offer any comments on the application at that point.
So we don't have to, or we're not allowed to, or we're not
Well,
required to?
it's really, it's up to,
What would be the purpose of public comment if they're going to hear, we're going to hear public comment at a future date?
I don't know.
Okay.
That was a question.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were advocating for it or not.
I'm trying to get clarity.
Commissioner Rutter?
Well, I'm not advocating for this necessarily either, but the benefit of getting public comment tonight is people took time out of their day to come here and see and provide their feedback, and to have them take another, evening, several months in advance, or several months from now.
Weeks.
Just people's time. But again, I understand that there may be differences in another iteration of the application.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that point. That makes a lot of sense. Only caveat I would have is that they might be making public comment on things that change, or, so it may their questions may get answered during these additional public meetings and at a future. So, I mean, I'm happy to go with the commission, as
We also
I don't know how we can entertain public comment and continue the meeting. We can't, we have to have the meeting if we're having public comment, I think.
yeah, I would also just
It's
point
a
out that
record.
your rules of procedure for a public hearing are pretty clear, that public comment, the public comment portion of the hearing follows the applicant presentation. So here you have a request on the table, formal request from the applicant to continue the hearing, and continue the date at which the applicant presentation will be presented to the commission. At that point, I believe then it would be proper to entertain public comment on the application.
I guess we could entertain public comment about the continuance.
Well, hey,
I mean,
that,
if you
can,
wanted
for
to.
sure. I mean, that's up to you. But again, I mean, I think that, you're all appointed as members of the commission to make these important decisions.
I also want, we have 20, probably more than that. We probably have close to 50 pages of public comment on applicants, on the existing, or both the first PUD that was submitted and the one that was submitted, the revised one that was submitted tonight. So yes, all of the public comments are going to be out of date. And if somebody here took time, to Jen's point, Commissioner Rutter's point, took time to come comment on what they've seen so far, allowing that is probably, I consider, in the same vein as the written comments that we've received.
But if we're not holding a hearing, it holds no
Right.
weight. Unfortunately, it's not on record if it's not on a hearing.
So then, can I ask, why did, what's the benefit of continuing the hearing versus the applicant withdrawing and starting over?
Well, I think this keeps the process moving. It's just a break in the middle of the hearing process to allow some extra engagement to take in that public comment. And the benefit is you don't have to start all over again. You're just continuing.
But we are starting all over again though, right? Because
No.
the PUD is going to be different than what we
Potentially.
review.
I mean, if the comments that are received are something that the applicant wants to take action on and make changes based on those comments, then yes, it would be revised, but it's not starting from scratch. It's just.
But
like
we
your
already have a
supplemental
revised
packet.
PUD tonight, don't we?
Correct, yeah.
So we've reviewed it twice, and that was one of my questions is, I've got a stack of papers on my dining room table. Are they all going to be superseded? Are they all?
You'll have potentially a subsequent packet with the changed ODP. I don't think things like the traffic report would change or any of those types of analyses that were included in the original packet. But the ODP itself might change with some additional amendments.
In all the public comment received to date, it still applies. to the
Correct.
case.
Yes. I mean, the applicant might have changed things that, from the first round of public comment, that makes that comment no longer relevant, but you will have the continuing stream of public comments that accompany the packets.
So will that be put all together for us to be able to see here, like dates? Does that make sense of my question?
Sure. Generally, it's an additive process where we just add another, supplemental packet. But if commission wants to get the whole thing all together, we could do that too.
Oh.
If that's
I just wanted to be able to encapsulate all those.
yeah, the revised. I mean, any revised ODP or staff memo would encapsulate the changes that were made. So you would have a fresh look at what is on the table for your hearing.
So I have a question for the, for the applicant. Is these additional neighborhood meetings, is the intention for educational purposes, or are you going into, what is your expectation when you hear comments about things? Are you going to try to look at them and maybe make changes? What is your expectation?
Yeah, it's meant to be twofold, as I previously explained, to offer information to hopefully help people understand. There were a lot of comments that have already been submitted to the city saying, please help us understand this, express it differently or in plain English, and to continue what we've been doing for a year, which is solicit feedback and input and suggestions. And if there are suggestions that make sense, then we'll offer changes. I will make a commitment to you that is a follow-up to how we did it this previous time, which is we submitted a document that shows the changes, and we submitted the ODP document with red bubbles around the sections that changed. So if you want to read the whole thing from scratch again, clearly, that's your prerogative. And if you just want to see what changed, we offer those tools, and we can do that again to help you focus. So if there are 6 pages that haven't had any changes, we'll try to communicate that to you.
If we're talking about, while we have you up here, if I can ask a question. The communication we received today said you were going to have 2 virtual meetings. Is it possible to do one of those, at least one of those in person? I think it would be, I suspect it'd be preferable to the community to be able to meet in person.
So we haven't solidified exactly the format, location, time, anything. We just wrote that letter this morning and had a conversation with staff and are trying to figure those things out. In talking to some members of the community and community organizations that specifically called for more time, they felt, and we concurred with them at the time, that virtual meetings were easier to make happen sooner, less intensive to organize, and more inclusive because more people feel comfortable attending. What we tried to do to balance that, so the short answer is we're open to suggestion. We haven't made any firm plans. What we were thinking was virtual meetings, different days of the week, different weeks, maybe even different times, so that if you're out of town or whatever your personal schedule is, hopefully you can make at least one of them. We're also committed to putting out a presentation. Some people were hoping to hear our presentation this evening. We want people to have that information and, if possible, review it before they come to the meeting so we don't have to spend a ton of time walking through everything. We know not everybody will have the opportunity to review in advance. In addition, we had the idea of having what we were calling sort of office hours, which is that I and some other members of our team would sit at the planning department's conference room. Obviously, publicly notice we're going to be here at these hours with staff, these dates. We were thinking of doing that 3 times in person. And anybody who, again, on different days of the week, maybe at different times, anybody who wants to just drop in, express their views or ask questions, members of our team and staff would be there. So we were trying to strike a balance between virtual and in-person. Larger in-person meetings like the one we held as the neighborhood meeting in July are an extraordinary amount of work to organize and facilitate. We need space for it. Unfortunately, we probably can't do it in the space we had it previously. So we're not necessarily averse to it. It's just a lot more work and would take more time to put it together. Some people may think it's a good idea. Other people may think it's easier for me to attend if it's a virtual meeting. So we're open to your input on that.
Okay, and then, we're at the end of February approximately, and April 6th is the time. I mean, a few meetings, maybe some changes. Is that going to be enough time for you? April 6th?
We hope so. We've tried to map out, and we'll confer with staff specific dates where we could, one in each of 2 different weeks in March, have these virtual meetings. would get harder if one of the meetings was in person, frankly, and different dates where we would do these sort of office hours where people could drop in.
Yeah.
So not 100% guarantee, but that's our intention. That's why we requested April 6th.
If it's going to be postponed again, I ask for at least a week's notice this time. It's a lot of work to prepare for these meetings, as it is for you, but we're volunteers.
I totally appreciate that. I was a planning commissioner for almost 5 years, so I'm fully appreciative of the work that you do and all the effort that goes into it and the prep. Just so you know, we received the comments about, from the community about changing the date or pausing yesterday, what was it, late morning or afternoon. So we were responding to public comment we hadn't previously seen or heard. We had every intention of coming tonight and presenting to you. So we're only doing it because we heard from a number of members of the community that they would appreciate that, and we wanted to be responsive to it.
Yeah, we thank you for that. It's much appreciated. Commissioner Evans.
If you're going to do virtual meetings, or at least one virtual meeting, I encourage you to record it and make it available to those members of the public that aren't available to go at that time, and then, give them a way for them to provide feedback. To me, that's the big benefit of having a virtual meeting, is so that people who have a schedule conflict can go back and look at it at a later time.
It won't be our meeting, so I can't make that
The
commitment
staff,
to you. But
please.
Sure, yes, we can record it. We could post it on Guide and Golden as well, so that people can watch it if they miss the meeting itself for any reason. So yeah, we're happy to accommodate that.
Should we discuss opinions on having an in-person meeting?
Well, I have a question related to that.
Let's finish with the applicant. Go ahead, Commissioner Cole.
So is the city going to be setting up the meetings, or are you guys going to be setting up the meetings?
I think that I'll let Rick answer that, but I think the city's organizing and we're collaborating to provide content and be there to answer questions.
Correct, yes. So the city would set up the meetings. The city would be the host of the meetings, and planning staff would be there to answer questions, but it would allow the applicant to explain their proposal, to take questions directly and comments directly from the public. Staff would be there for any clarification, for any kind of questions that are about the city process, the city code, the city policy documents, et cetera. And it would be more of just a question and answer session, really. And then the comments, and as I mentioned in the email to you all, the comments that we receive in those meetings, that format is very hard to capture comments. So we're going to ask the public to actually send written comments through email so that we make sure we capture them, or appear in person, of course, on April 6th.
How do you feel about having one of the meetings in person?
I'm sorry?
How do you feel about having one of the meetings in person?
If we can find a venue, I think we can accommodate that.
I think that's important.
Yeah. It's
Compared to virtual.
Ms. Simmons was kind enough to produce the city's meeting schedule. It's very hard. This room is booked essentially the entire month of March already.
But you've done a lot of them in the rec center.
Yeah, and that's challenging as well. We looked at that too.
The rec center is closed the last 2 weeks of March because of spring break camps for the rooms we would need to be in.
In the evenings?
And their rooms close at 8 p.m. I mean, the rec center itself closes at 8 p.m., so the rec center is not always a great option. It can be challenging as well.
We'll work on that, but we're just trying to communicate that it is challenging to find a venue within the city. So we might have to work with the applicant to see if there's another location outside of the city if we can't find, say, the community center.
But then recording them can be challenging if they're in places without that equipment, so.
Right, the virtual one would be a lot easier because we could post the video afterwards if we need to. If we can't get into this room for the recording aspect of it, the broadcast aspect of it, we can always conduct the meeting, record it, and then post it afterwards as well.
So this room is booked every day?
Except for
every night?
Fridays and weekends.
And
Yeah,
can I ask, is it booked by other commissions that might be able to go to a smaller space and we just take over?
Yeah, well, tonight, for example, the Sustainability Board is meeting in our conference room. So
Okay.
we juggle those as well. We can try. We
Yeah.
can certainly try to see if there's a board that could move if they're not having a meeting that needs to be conducted and broadcast.
I think we should be able to make that happen. A board of 8 to 10 people, you know, I don't know, it seems like we could do that.
Right, and staff is not saying that this is about, we're just trying to communicate the challenge of an in-person meeting on short notice. Getting this set was somewhat challenging.
Yeah.
For an
Rick, just curious, do we ever rent out, like, the Mountaineering Center? They've got huge meeting rooms that sit empty most of the time.
Yeah, they do. We haven't rented from them before. Usually it's the applicant who has to rent them out, right? If someone's going to conduct a neighborhood meeting, the applicant has to pay for the meeting hall and make that reservation. It's just hard to do on a short notice. Like
Yeah.
when we get applications, it's usually a couple months in advance that they say, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to look for a meeting
Right.
hall, et cetera. And make
But it's a big project, it's not 2 duplexes, it's,
Right,
It's-
right. Yeah,
Well,
but
it-
the venue challenges still exist, whether it's big or small.
Yeah.
And not all the meeting venues have recording equipment, so if that is a priority, you know, to record an in-person meeting, we may not be able to do that.
I think it needs to be a priority to record at least one of the meetings, whether it's the virtual one,
Mhm.
and then have the in-person one not be fully recorded.
I can't imagine that Bob and Diane can't figure that out. I mean, they do.
Let's continue this discussion perhaps, but does anyone have anything else for the applicant while he's standing up here? All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm willing to discuss more about the meetings if you guys would all like to get more information to staff.
I would like to make one request of staff, because this is a organized, staff-led meeting. I think it's important to draw a distinction between the applicant's proposal and presentation versus what is legally allowed in the language of the PUD, so that the public is aware that it could be different from what the presentation that the applicant may show.
Maybe I need another explanation. Is it that the language in the ODP can change from what is explained in person, or?
No, going back to central neighborhood plan, where we showed lots of pretty pictures of things that were going to be allowed under the new zoning,
Mhm.
and everyone was fully on board with that. And then what was actually built
Oh, I see.
fit the
I
language,
see.
or was legally allowed by right, but was very, very different than what they were told at the
Sure.
neighborhood meetings.
Like architectural renderings, elevations, et cetera. I
Mhm.
see.
Yeah.
Noted for sure.
Commissioner Roderick.
Just to expand on that point a little bit, I think that the vision is one thing, but also what's in the PUD document is another. And so to make sure that what is being presented to the public is what's in the document specifically, if possible. And I think it's important for us to provide recommendations on maybe how the public outreach is done, but I think that it's what it is a recommendation from Planning Commission. It's up to staff and the applicant to figure out what those neighborhood meetings look like.
Commissioner Collins.
Are there any timing, I guess, what, if any, are the timing ramifications related to the process? Isn't there a set number of days that are required?
For things like packet deadlines and such, or?
Just the approval process?
I don't think there's any limit, you mean as far as continuing the meeting?
Correct.
I don't think there's any limitation on the number of times we can continue the meeting.
Right,
It's
as long as the
not set in
applicant agrees to
code
it,
unless there's
right?
any.
Commissioner
Precedent
Collins, I think you might be thinking about the 60 or 90 days for site plan as opposed to.
That could very well be
Oh,
what I'm
okay.
considering, yes.
Okay.
Considering they asked for the continuation too, I wouldn't think I wouldn't think a deadline would apply to us.
Yeah, I don't foresee an issue, but we can certainly cross-check and make sure there's no legal limit.
Any other thoughts, comments on the public outreach? Staff, do you,
One last thing.
Commissioner Evans?
I fully support the additional public outreach, and I was reading through the neighborhood plan for this area in preparation for this meeting, and it did repeatedly refer to having a public outreach process as part of the rezoning, so I really appreciate that. We are having a staff-led process for that, because that does fit in with what we our aspirational goals in the neighborhood plan.
Commissioner DeBerry?
I don't know if we can make it a condition of the continuation, but I certainly encourage that we have one of the two meetings being in person, and I understand there's venue issues, but as it's been explained to us, this is the redevelopment project of a generation. It's significant, and I think it merits the work that goes into it. And I personally feel that some people are comfortable with the virtual meetings, and other people want to be there in person, and hopefully there would be some sketches and things that they could things that are tangible that they could have a look at and talk to people directly. But I'm zoomed out. I'm tired of virtual meetings, and I know I can't go to this meeting, but I think that a lot of people in the public would appreciate the option of doing it virtual, watching a recording, or going into an in-person meeting. So I don't know if we're going to deliberate this and get other opinions, but I'd really like to encourage that.
Yeah, and I want to say, I really appreciate the applicant, being willing to do this. I just want to, it's probably the case, but make sure that the in-person is after the meetings, that they have. So we can go in and ask questions after. If somebody misses a meeting, they can watch a video and then go in.
The office hours in particular?
Yeah, the office hours, if they're going to be at the, planning office.
Any other thoughts? No?
Can we make that a condition of the?
Do we need to? I mean, it seems like,
question.
I mean, I think that the applicant has made a request, right? The letter that was formally submitted to staff says that they suggest that there be both virtual and in-person opportunities for members of the community to express their opinions. So I think that if Planning Commission ultimately approves the continuance, then I think that staff will work cooperatively with the applicant to make sure that there's multiple opportunities, either in virtual or in person. I don't think a condition on the continuance is necessary. I think we've heard the statements from the commission, and I trust staff to work cooperatively with the applicant to make sure that these things are scheduled to provide a maximum opportunity for input from the public.
how do you feel about that, Commissioner Barry?
Not great. I think they're going to be virtual, and I think in public process, it's good for public gatherings. So
I think these guys will try really hard to have an in-person meeting.
We definitely will. We have heard planning commission, so we will.
Can we give up our March study session in this room to have that meeting?
That's something we could do.
Or have, reschedule our study session to a conference room in your office for the day before or the day after. And I think it's that important that we need to prioritize that over just about anything else.
Yeah. Agreed. Does staff have any additional questions for us in terms of
None from staff.
planning the meetings? Okay. All right. So any additional, public comments? So what did we decide? I'm willing to entertain it if people feel strongly about it, but I'm not sure I see the point, but I'm seeing some no's.
my only suggestion on public comment is if anybody who made the trip here and spent the time wants to comment about the continuation, that'd be fine, but they really can't comment about the case.
Yeah, and conversely, I think that there probably were some people that did not show up tonight because they couldn't make public comments. So I think it's kind of unfair in that sense, too. So I would probably just say no.
Okay.
Anybody remember that? No? Good. Okay. So we need to make a motion and have any further discussion at this point. So is there a motion for continuance?
I'll make the motion.
continuance.
Go ahead.
A motion to approve the continuance.
Second.
Okay. Is there,
Wait, do we have to say a motion to approve until?
I just would recommend that, I know April 6th was the date recommended, but I always like to make sure that in the motion, we have a time certain as well. And it's pretty clear that it would probably be 6:30, which is your regular meeting time. But just to clarify on the record that it would be continued to April 6th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. With the continued hearing be held here in council chambers would be appropriate.
okay. So we had a motion. Does he need to repeat you or just?
I can repeat what you just said, but it's on the record. Motion to continue to April 6th at 6:30 in council chambers.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we got a second. Any additional discussion? Nope. Okay, we'll take a roll call vote.
Right, Fanganello,
Yes.
Tiberi,
Yes.
Colbert,
Yes.
Scrabble,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
and Caskey.
Yes.
Sorry, I included you, Colbert, but technically can't vote.
Your vote counts with me.
All right, thank you. We'll see everybody again on April 6th regarding this matter. Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion of possible referral items for other boards in the city. Anybody have anything? Nothing? Okay, other matters?
I'd like to get the discussion of the minutes on a study
Yeah.
session.
Yeah, good
I think
reminder.
that would be helpful to get that ironed out. Okay. And what do we've got a meeting coming up March 1st or
March
2nd?
2nd, but you don't have a hearing.
Is that the
So
zoning?
we could do a study session on March 2nd,
What's next week?
which is next week. And so there's no packet, so if you want to show up and talk, we can do that. We can talk about the minutes, as sure as if that's something that.
And there was some discussion of having an executive session to talk about how approval and the PUD process works. I don't know if Lori shared that with you. And could we maybe have that executive session so we're not doing that at the April 6th meeting?
You know, it's really up to it's the board's discretion at any point if you feel that an executive session is needed for legal advice on a specific matter. I mean, obviously that takes a two-thirds majority, right, of the quorum to approve an executive session. In this case, in my discussion with Lori, my understanding is that there may be a need for an executive session after the commission has had the opportunity to hear from the applicant regarding the presentation, hear from members of the public, and then to discuss, obtain legal advice from her related to the condition, the conditions of approval that may be considered and applying the appropriate criteria, right, for approval of the PUD and the ODP. To me, it seems like you wouldn't want to schedule that or contemplate scheduling that in advance of hearing from the applicant and members of the public.
Well, if I understand correctly, if we have an executive session without the public present, we can't go in there and talk about the merits of the case. My understanding of the purpose of the executive session would be to discuss the rules of how PUDs work and what we can negotiate for, or are we allowed to negotiate, or can you horse trade? Can you do those things more generically?
Okay,
if we go
maybe what I need to do then is have a further discussion with Lori, because quite frankly, we talked about it for all of about half a minute in the context of me kind of coming up to speed on the requested continuance tonight. So
just for my edification, though, if we have a hearing and we listen to a meeting, listen to all the public hearing, we can't call an executive session to go huddle and talk about the case itself and what we like and don't like about it, and then come back and make a decision. I mean,
that's actually fairly routinely done. I mean, if you hear from the applicant, hear all of the public comments, and then you have specific legal questions, then it's appropriate to call an executive session under 4024B.
sure, legal questions, but we can't talk about what we like and don't like about
They can't
the building
deliberate
design.
in the meeting, in the executive session, right?
We could talk about legal procedure, but we can't actually go into an executive session and say, well, I like that facade, I don't like that facade.
No, I mean, those types of discussions should be held
Yeah.
in a public forum, right?
What about the legality of several options that we may be considering? Whether you use the term horse trading, is that something that needs to be discussed in executive session, or are we asking that to the public? I mean, asking you in front of everyone, like legal implications.
No, those are the discussions that are appropriate to have in an executive session.
But what I'm kind of referring to is the rules of the game. So I don't know what you're allowed to ask for or not ask for legally. Frankly, I have the impression you can horse trade anything If somebody asks for a PUD, you can tell them they have to do this, or this, or this, or you're not going to approve it. But I don't know if that's right or wrong. And that's where Lori suggested that we go into an executive session to actually discuss basically the rules of the game, the legalities of it, but not the specifics of the case. And that's why I'm wondering why we can't have that discussion, and it might actually be better to have that discussion before we have the hearing than after we have the hearing. So
Okay,
maybe you should talk to Lori.
Let me relay that request, and this continuance, quite frankly, may provide that opportunity, right? But I'll circle back with her on that point.
I guess I would just, if I could, just add, it seems like you may not know what you want to talk about in executive session until you actually hear from the applicant, hear everything that they're proposing, and what the public comment is, so that you know what you want to potentially propose as a condition, and get legal advice.
So I think what you're saying is that if we hear stuff, or if we hear the applicant, we hear all the public comment, we can adjourn to executive session and somebody could say, I would like to ask for this, this, and this. Am I legally allowed to ask for that?
Yeah.
And Lori could say yes or no, but, everyone else couldn't say, I disagree with you, I'd rather have this. You could just, is that kinda
Yeah,
how-
I mean, executive, like I know, and Marcus, feel free to interrupt, but I know council does break for executive sessions specifically to get legal advice about something that they're considering, and that legal advice isn't supposed to be out there in the world. This is like attorney-client kind of privilege stuff, and that's why it needs to happen there. And then you come back when you have an understanding of what you want to ask for, after you get that legal advice.
But you could also talk about negotiating strategy, because we used to do that on GURA. But let's wait, and let's let Lori and Marcus discuss how to proceed with that, I think.
Commissioner Ryder, did you have something?
I was just going to say that I'm pretty sure what council is trying to advise is that we're able to discuss the rules of the game, but maybe in context of all the things that we've heard after the fact. So certainly the rules of the game, but maybe like having specific things we want to talk about, to Commissioner Evans's point.
Commissioner Fingal?
I just wanted to confirm, so that technically, right now, we have a meeting next week, but we didn't have anything on the agenda, is that correct? Unless we decide to do something here this evening.
Correct.
Okay.
So if commission wants to hold a study session on Wednesday, we certainly have the room available to do so, and could, but the packet deadline would have been today. We were operating under the assumption that we would be continuing this meeting to March 2nd as well. But if there is a request from Planning Commission to have that meeting.
What do we have for the 16th?
Potentially, that's what they're using this room to.
So then, I would suggest we grab the 2nd and keep the 16th open to use the room.
So I thought the next week was going to be the new zoning map, and the new zoning was going to come to us for the public hearing.
Yeah, we're not ready for that yet. So that's not.
So that'll be March or April? I mean, sorry,
Yeah,
April or May?
more likely April.
Before it comes to us for public hearing, and then.
Right, the proposal would be for our current thought is April.
Okay.
We'll have to get back to you on a specific date. That does lead me to say, though, if, the draft 3 has been out there for quite a while, and I would just encourage planning commissioners to, if you haven't read through draft 3, I mean, draft 3 is mainly just an organizational, legal review effort, but to just start preparing for that meeting now while you have some time, now that we have a pause in our meetings with the CoorsTek request, just to get that solidified, so that when we do have our public meeting about that, you're ready to we can be productive in that sense.
Yeah. So I don't know if we need a motion, but I'd like to suggest that we have a meeting on March 2nd to discuss minutes and procedures for minutes, and if the attorneys deem appropriate, we can have a discussion on PUDs. If not, it's a short meeting.
What was originally going to be slated for the March study session?
Well, we figured we were going to be talking about the code. I just don't think we're ready to do that at the moment.
Like the March 16th one, not the March 2nd?
we were trying to keep things flexible because we weren't sure how CoorsTek was going to go, and we weren't sure when the legal review of the code was going to be ready, so we were just operating under the assumption that it would be one or the other in some form.
Do we have changes to us as a body coming up with terms and new people and what have you? And how does that affect the case that's continued and some of this education that we're talking about? Just curious.
Sure, yeah, the board and commission interviews, I believe, are April 5th or so, beginning of April at council.
Okay.
So the application process is underway. There is one of you who is termed out, Mr. Chair Caskey. So we know we will be saying goodbye to your chair. However, so he will be here through May, or, yeah, I think May is generally the last time for the people who are currently serving. But that's a good point. I mean, there is, and there are, I believe, 3 others on commission who have their term, their first term coming to completion and can reapply. And we're operating under the assumption that they will, but we don't know.
Will you tell us if we need to? You'll tell us if we need to, right?
You need to reply, right?
Yeah, you need to do it now.
You need to reply.
I do? Okay.
You haven't been on for.
You've only been.
I've only
Oh,
been
no.
2 years.
No, then you don't need to reply,
Okay.
just the people that are up.
Okay.
Todd.
Yeah, Commissioner Collins.
What's
Process? Because it's came in.
Yeah, because I took.
It's Colbert and
Yeah.
Scrabble, and Colbert, they filled unfinished
Whatever it
terms,
is.
so they
Okay.
need to reapply.
Collins, Colbert, and Scribble.
Yep.
The 3rd, I believe.
When is the deadline?
It's first week of March, I believe.
think it's
so
the
there's
3rd.
another week or so.
Better get on that, guys.
So, yeah, so folks reapply. And also, since we're on the air, we're not usually on the air live. I just wanted to make a plug for anyone watching to go ahead and apply.
Come
if you,
join the fun.
Yeah, if you want to make a difference on planning commission. So anyway, so it sounds like we're going to do March 2nd next week, study session for the thing, for the minutes, how we're recording the minutes, and PUDs perhaps. And then the 16th, we're giving up our session to have one of the public meetings here.
That's the tentative plan for the
Okay.
moment.
Okay.
We'll work with the applicant. The date has to work for them, of course, and so
Sure.
that is an opportune time, because we can have control over that meeting, obviously. But there are some other options we could potentially move around the calendar as well. We'll do our best to get an in-person meeting in the city.
We don't have to give up that 16th, and if there is another time and space that works, I think we should still continue to have a study session, either like dive deeper into the code rewrite or something else. Not terribly excited about lots of empty space on the calendar when we have some pretty complicated stuff coming up in terms of public hearing for the code and this case as well. So I know that's a lot. I'm sorry. I'm saying all this in the work. You guys are going to be the ones doing the work to prep for the study session. So I understand that's a lot of work for you. And we appreciate you guys, and we appreciate everything that you're doing, especially now that you're a lot more short-staffed. But
Thank you.
Mhm.
So
We
did you mean
will
on the
certainly do our
2nd,
best.
or did you mean on the 16th?
I meant on the so my point is, on the 6th, we are having the meeting next week, and on the 16th, we are willing to give up the space here for the public hearing, but if there is a different time and place that works better for the public hearing, and this is not needed, then I would prefer to keep it as a study session.
Right.
So 2nd and the 16th.
Yes, and have 2 study sessions in
Just was
March,
making sure.
because it's possible we won't have any in April or May.
Yeah, and alternatively, we can also host a meeting in the conference room
Yes.
and handle it that way.
Great. Any other matters? No? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.